Hello and welcome to Love Anything Art. Today I have a fun abstract flower pattern for you. It's really easy and you can choose any colors you want. These are the colors I'm going to pick, and basically just in picking my colors, I just wanted to pick colors that looked good together. You could do complementary colors or bold colors. You could do rainbow colors. You can choose whatever you want. You'll need 4 different colors, and I have this tiny little bit of purple, which I don't need a lot of the pink or the purple, so you only need like a little bit. So if you have like a little bit of a color left you've been wanting to use, like now is the time. These are all of my pretty colors that I mixed up, just random colors from a bunch of scrap clay, and just mixed them up, put them in here. For the 2 main colors of the project, which is that pretty like maroon color and this bluish green color, bluey blue. You'll need about the same amount of each of those pieces, and just going to chop up each of those just into small little pieces. And I was like really meticulously not trying to get the purple and the blue color together. But I end up mixing them up anyway. Sometimes I get kind of lost when I'm doing things on the projects, and I'm like, why did I do that afterwards? Anyway, just really small pieces. See, I was really like trying to keep them separate. Clay is fun sometimes. You like cut it and it like flies across the room. Okay, anyway, so mix those 2 up. Those are going to be the primary colors of your abstract flower. So just keep that in mind when you're picking your colors. The purple kind of looks like a wine, like a really beautiful wine color in a glass. A beautiful tall glass of wine. Just mix them up pretty good too, because you don't want like a big clump of purple or a big clump of blue to kind of be in one spot. You want a fairly even distribution of colors. There you go. I was rolling this out and I was thinking, you know what? With the little gaps and stuff in it, it kind of looks like rocks, like that piece right there before I rolled over it. It would be really pretty if you kind of just smushed it all together and cut out a piece and made it look like crystals or something. I don't know. I was sitting there playing with it. Sometimes you get on a project and then you start cutting and moving things around. You're like, you know what that looks like? That's a great idea. Inspiration. You'll find it all over the place. You do want this to be pretty thick because you're going to be putting a stencil on top, and you're going to need lots of wiggle room. So make it as large or as thick as you possibly can. With that pink and the purple, just going to roll those out as thin as I can get them through my pasta machine. Got to make sure you don't have a big old clump of it before you get it through the pasta machine. And I rolled all those out to a 5, which is right there in the middle of my pasta machine. It goes from 0 to 9, but I like them to be a little bit thinner, but when you roll it through the machine, it does get all wonky. So I just like to finish rolling it by hand. You can do this on a piece of paper too, because if it gets hot, that stuff's gonna stick to your work surface, and then it's just gonna ruin it, which I've happened to me a lot. You do want these to be as thin as possible. I mean, like maybe, thicker than paper, but as thin as you can get them. And you're just going to place the pink and the purple in strips on top of your chopped up clay. And there is no rhyme or reason to this. You can overlap them as much as you want, make them in itty bitty tiny little strips. You can make them in larger, thicker strips, across, wide, width, wise. Just make sure that you obviously want to alternate. So if you put down a purple, don't put purple down right beside it, because then that would just defeat the purpose. You could, in fact, do more than 2 colors. You could do 3 or 4 if you wanted to. And this is why you didn't need a lot of the clay, because you're not going to use a lot. So just ripping off little strips stretching it out a little bit more and then just putting it on there. I think a third color would have been pretty. I probably would have chose white just because the colors in the back are dark and then the colors in the front are light. I was thinking maybe like a bold color, like a statement color, maybe a yellow would have been nice in there. I don't know. Either white or yellow. But you just want to make sure that top is completely covered. And in some spots I did kind of mess up my golden rule and put the purple by the purple. But I was running out of like, well, that's purple and pink right beside each other, obviously. So it's like, so one color's got to go there. So I tried to overlap as much as possible and get a good variety. Then you want to just roll that out a little bit just to get it all stuck together and to thin it out just a little bit more. But always keep in mind that you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on top when you're rolling it to get the stencil to kind of sink down into the clay, get the colors to come up through it, shave it off. I think it was a little dirty from last time that I used it, so yeah, make sure that's clean before you put it on there. Otherwise, you're going to get colors from all the things that you did. And of course, when you have a pattern that's not repeating, it's hard to decide where you want to lay it down on the clay. Sometimes you just got to go with it. Be like, this is just what it's going to have to be. I think about things too much, so I took a lot of time in deciding where I wanted it to be on here. And then you just shave it off. And you probably are going to have to do this a couple of times to get the clay to come up through the stencil enough, depending on how thick your clay was that you rolled out behind it. Just playing around with that. And sometimes the cutter doesn't want to slice over the top of the stencil. So you really got to work at it and come at it from like different angles. It just depends on, I think the cutter, that one's not too intricate, but some of them are really, really bad to try to cut out all of the colors and stuff from. And there it is. I thought this was really pretty. You could just cut something out just like this and leave it just like this. It would be pretty. But I did want more of a distorted look to mine. So I am going to pick out another stencil to put on here. I was just kind of showing you, places that you could cut that just put your cutter on there and see what just kind of sings to you. It is still relatively thick, so I can continue on. If it wasn't, I could probably just put another color on the backing, like a solid color, and that would work too if you want it to bulk up if you went too thin. So when you want to pick out another stencil to put on top, you're going to want something that isn't like really wide open with a lot of spaces, because everywhere that's open, you're going to cut away what's behind. So I'm lifting it up kind of off my clay a little bit so you'll see exactly where it's going to come apart, exactly where you're going to shave off. So like here, if you used this, all of your pretty flower pattern is going to be gone. You don't want something with a lot of open space. And some of them are kind of iffy. You really got to think about it. Pull it back away from the clay like I'm doing there. You can see what will be cut away, what areas, what chunks, what pieces. And I really liked this, and I did ultimately go with this one because it had those big strips on there. And I thought if I placed it on here in just the right angle, it would not completely mess up my pattern behind. I was trying to decide between this one and that one. I think they both would have worked. Obviously, I'll never know on that other one because I didn't try it. Or if you made a big enough slab, you could cut it in half and put one stencil on one and one stencil on the other and see which one kind of shakes out. And this was me playing with it. And I was just like, I don't want to cut away a bunch of my pretty flower. So I tried to put the long strips over the larger chunks that I didn't want to be taken away. And then put it on there, pressed it into the clay, and then kind of shaved it off. I would recommend shaving off like a very crisp shave, because if you left it just like this, it would it messes up the pattern. I did that once, and then I messed it up, and I had to put the stencil back on top. it was a big old mess, just trust me. Just on this particular project, I would make sure that you have a nice clean cut on top. So press down into the clay as many times as you need to with your roller in order to get the clay to come up through the stencil and to shave it away. Okay, enough of my hammering. And then again, just kind of pick out your shapes, and you'll see there it left a lot of my flower pattern behind. You can definitely tell that it's a flower behind that. And sometimes I just like to go really simple on my patterns that I cut out. So just using regular circle cutters. And I was like putting my finger there to decide like what would look the best and where I wanted to make my cut for the little circle that I'm going to use inside to cut out. So it has a little hole in there, and then I'm going to use that for the topper of my earrings. I'm putting the cutter back on there because I feel like it makes a better cut if you're going to use another cutter inside. That way it keeps its shape and it doesn't like press it out. You can skip that part and just cut out your additional shape inside if you don't want to re-puncture the clay using your cutter. It's just a personal preference. I just like doing it this way. Just get a nice, even, crisp cut. And then when you finally decide where you want to put your little cutter inside, then you can press down and have your earring topper. And if you want to, you can cut this out on whatever item that you're going to be baking this on in the oven. So if you bake it on a tile like me, or you bake it on a piece of paper or whatever, you can just cut it on there. I don't mind like a slight distortion of the shape. I'm going to use my fingers anyway to kind of manipulate the sides to make it a bit smoother. If you want to do that after you bake it, obviously, that is, your free will to do. I just like doing it like this. And something about the organicness of it when you aren't trying to be super perfect about something. You just cut it out, and if it kind of gets a little wonky or bent, I don't know. I feel like it just adds to the piece, depending on what you're making. Something like this is just kind of fun and kind of goes with the pattern of it, like abstract, Be sure to poke your holes in there before you bake it, if that's your thing. I like to do it that way. A lot less work after baking. I try to simplify after baking because I don't like to sand and do all that stuff. These are them, and I did put a little coating of resin on there. That's the back, kind of a little paint splotch look on there, like a paint just flew across there and just kind of went everywhere. But anyway, those are my pieces. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!